for Scarborough North.
Mr. Speaker, my fellow members of Parliament have brought up an issue that is important not only to me and this government, but to all Canadians, the well-being of our veterans, members of the Canadian Armed Forces, and their families. I believe it is first and foremost important to recognize that we might not be here in this place having this conversation were it not for the sacrifices made exactly 100 years ago during the First World War and the sacrifices made since then all over the world by the women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces. It is with that formidable legacy of service and sacrifice in mind that our government is committed to providing all veterans and their families the services and benefits they need when they need them. As the veteran community evolves and expands, so does its needs, hence the required flexibility and demand-driven nature of the programs and services that Veterans Affairs Canada provides. Many departments within the government deal with lapsed funding each year. They make estimates on spending, and the money can only be used for the purpose that it was intended for. In other words, this is part of the regular operating procedures. Veterans Affairs Canada, similar to many government departments, faces the challenge of accurately forecasting its variable funding requirements due to the quasi-statutory nature of its programs. This necessitates Treasury Board approval before program funding can be adjusted. It is very important that Veterans Affairs funding is quasi-statutory. In Canada, the veteran population consists of over 600,000 former Canadian Armed Forces members and their families. The population of ill and injured veterans served by the department is closer to 200,000. Since we stand ready to help any veteran who needs assistance, that 200,000 grows as more and more veterans come forward. Whether 10 or 10,000 more come forward, the funding model allows Veterans Affairs to provide programming and benefits without having to go back to Parliament every single time when more resources are needed. Over 90% of Veterans Affairs programs and benefits are considered quasi-statutory in nature, meaning they meet the definition of being non-discretionary, demand-driven, and based on need or eligibility. The amount of this funding is dependent upon the number of clients who apply for benefits and their eligibility for programs. This is what makes it so hard to estimate exact numbers. It should also be pointed out that over the past 3 years, 98% of the funds available to these quasi-statutory programs were spent to support veterans and their families, benefits and services that they need. The remaining 2% represents the flexibility required to ensure sufficient funding within each of the 26 separate programs budget to support all veterans who are approved for benefits and services. These are the very programs at the heart of this department and our government. The very programs that ensure our veterans have access to the services they need, and the very programs that our veterans and their families rely on to live their very best lives. Nothing called for in this motion isn't already being done. Funds for Veterans Affairs quasi-statutory programs are returned to consolidated revenues and then used again in subsequent years to ensure access to these programs and benefits. Mr. Speaker, our government is committed to supporting the health and well-being of our veterans. Just as veterans and their fallen comrades have made sacrifices to preserve our future, our government is committed to protecting them and their future. That is why we have committed almost $10 billion over the last 3 years to make it easier for the women and men who have served in uniform this great country to access the benefits they deserve. In 2015, we pledged to make it easier for veterans and their families to access services, to do more to support families, to streamline benefits, to reduce the administrative overhead, to improve the client experience with Veterans Affairs Canada, and to help our brave women and men make a successful transition to life after the military. These were ambitious goals, and our government has delivered progress and real change. A lot of time and money has been spent to establishing new programs and improving existing ones, and now the focus is on service delivery excellence. We know this is an area that requires our utmost attention. In 2016, we increased the Disability Award to $360,000, the amount that veterans and the Veterans Ombudsman said it should have been at for years. We increased income replacement to 90% of a veteran's pre-release salary. We expanded access to better address career limitations as a result of illness or injury. We reopened the 9 offices closed by the previous Conservative government, and given the need, we opened a brand new office in Surrey and expanded our outreach to the north to assist underserved communities. We started the process of hiring more staff after the previous government made cuts, creating an artificial budget surplus. We established an education and training benefit. We improved the career transition benefits offered to veterans and their families. We introduced the Pension for Life, a monthly, tax-free payment for life recognizing the pain and suffering that was resulted by service-related illness or injury. Mr. Speaker, the veteran community has told us loud and clear that we need to make it simpler, easier, and more user-friendly to access programs and services provided by the department. They've told us about the effect of the backlog of applications for benefits and services and the time they have had to wait for decisions to be made. That is why our government has taken concrete steps, concrete measures to improve service delivery, take the initiative to reach out to veterans and their families to get the information needed to support claims and to explain benefits. It is also why, with all these new and enhanced benefits and services and increased efforts to inform veterans of what is available to them, application rates have increased exponentially in recent years. For example, over the past 3 years, there has been a 32% increase in disability benefits applications. It means veterans are more aware of the benefits they may be eligible for, which is good news. It also means that the department needs to add the capacity to respond and to evaluate those applications in a reasonable amount of time. This will allow them to respond more quickly and with increased flexibility so that veterans can choose the suite of benefits and services that suit their particular needs. Many changes have already taken place. Staff now triage claims to ensure that veterans who apply for mental health services receive priority in their evaluation so that they can receive treatment without any delay. Through additional staffing and process improvements, the department has been able to increase the number of disability claims processed and to allow a larger number of veterans to receive decisions on their applications. For example, Mr. Speaker, 96% of first applications completed for PTSD are approved. To keep up with the rise in demand and ensure that veterans get services and benefits when they need them, our government is spending $42.8 million over 2 years, starting in the 2018-2019 fiscal year, to improve service delivery at Veterans Affairs Canada. But the increasing number of applications continues to outpace the increase in capacity at the department. So progress is ongoing to hire new employees to help ensure that veterans, Canadian Armed Forces members, RCMP personnel, and their families are provided with the best possible services when and where they need them. Change like this can't happen overnight, and efforts are underway to create an easy-to-access, simple-to-navigate, veteran-centric process. We owe veterans the means to get back on their feet and on with their lives, and that is why our government is committed to delivering every day to help veterans accomplish the successful transition after serving, rebuild their lives, and enjoy a healthy state of well-being. Last funds at the end of a fiscal year have no impact on that commitment or on the department's ability to deliver on that commitment. Funds returned to the fiscal framework cannot be redirected for a new purpose, nor would they be having any impact on the department's ongoing efforts to improve service delivery. Mr. Speaker, make no mistake, our government continues to strive to provide faster, more efficient, and higher quality service for our veterans. We know that we are not finished with this work, but our commitment and our hard work continue to make improvements in the lives of the women and men who have dedicated their lives to Canada's peace and security. Thank you.
Bravo. Questions and comments. The honourable member for Courtenay Alberni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, while the Liberals are patting themselves on the backlog is growing. More and more veterans are waiting for their application to be opened. More and more veterans are calling Veterans Affairs and not getting someone to pick up the phone. This government said they would fix the problem under the Conservatives, the 1,000 jobs that were cut. They're patting themselves on the back, saying that they're spending over $10 million. Well, tell that to the veteran at home, because the person that's waiting for their application to be open. Mr. Speaker, we know that lapse spending can actually be carried over for the next fiscal year because the parliamentary budget officer tells us it's allowed up to 5%. That's a lot of money, Mr. Speaker. When we look at the last 3 years alone, that's $372 million, more than enough money for the government to actually fix the 12 service standards. That's half their service standards that they're currently not meeting. And this is the same party that said they would end lapse spending. I have to, Mr. Speaker, through you, ask the member, why have they not honoured their promise that they made in the campaign in 2015 to stop lapse spending? They haven't explained themselves at all today why they made that promise, why they haven't followed through. They're trying to say it's irrelevant now. But in 2015, when they were talking to veterans, there was a lot of relevancy when there was $1.1 billion that the Conservatives left on the table.
The honourable member for Scarborough North.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member opposite for his question, and I thank him for his passion for supporting our veterans. I'm on the same page with him when it comes to ensuring that our veterans receive the benefits and services that they need. We know already that consolidated revenue funds, money is returned there for quasi-statutory programming and used again in subsequent budget years. That is why we continue to make smart investments. In fact, our government has invested $10 billion. 93% of that department's budget goes directly to programs and benefits that help our veterans. Our veterans have served, they have given so much to the peace and security of our country, and we are working very hard to repair the damage that was done under the previous government. We opened 9 offices that were previously closed. We've hired 470 new staff, and that good work is going to ensure that veterans receive the programs and services that they need for a successful life after military. Thank you.
Questions and comments. Question commentaire. The honourable member for Essex.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I have to say I'm a bit stunned because what I'm hearing from the other side sounds like they won't be supporting to take this $372 million in lapse spending and put it into programs to help our veterans. So I have a very simple question for the member. Will the Liberals be supporting putting the money that they left on the table back into spending for our veterans? Yes or no?
Honourable member for Scarborough North.
Mr. Speaker, what we are supporting are benefits and services to help veterans. It's exactly why our government put in a joint suicide prevention strategy. We created a Veterans Emergency Fund. We invested in a new career transition service. We created a pension for life for veterans who have served our country. We created the education and training benefit. We've expanded the medical tax credit for psychiatric service dogs, and we continue to invest in a center of excellence for PTSD research. These important investments are helping veterans ensure that they have a successful transition to life after they have served hard to defend our country, to create peace and security for Canada and all around the world. And we will continue as a government to make sure that our veterans are well served and that we support them every step.
Time just for one more short question and response. La députée de Rivière-des-Mille-Îles.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. J'ai écouté avec attention mon collègue et j'aimerais qu'il répète ce que notre gouvernement a mis en place de ce qui avait été l'ancien gouvernement, tout ce qui avait coupé, mais pour être sûr, pour ceux qui écoutent, si des fois il y a des gens de Rivière-des-Mille-Îles, comment qu'on pourrait les aider, qu'est-ce qu'on a mis en place pour justement rectifier la situation des anciens vétérans et de s'assurer qu'on va bien en prendre soin. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
La députée de Scarborough North.
I thank my colleague for her question and for her continued advocacy and work on this particular file. Mr. Speaker, the fact is this: whether 10 or 10,000 veterans need help and come forward for benefits, our government is ready to provide them with the benefits and services that they need, which is why we have increased accessibility by reopening 9 offices that were previously closed by the last government. We have hired 470 new staff because we understand that there is a backlog to address, but veterans oftentimes need service and they need it immediately, which is why we've made targeted investments into, for example, areas on PTSD research. We are creating more benefits and programs so that veterans get the supports they need.